Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you get something out of today's episode. And if you're returning here, you already know the rule. Interact with the content somehow. Leave us a review. It takes 5 seconds. If you're on Spotify, hit that review button. Let us know what you really think. Or reach out to us via Instagram or the email at Medevac Podcast, medevacpodcast.com. Let us know the stories you want to hear, the people you want to hear from, because we listen. Our guest today is Dan Frye. Dan is a Army veteran. He is also a former firefighter, paramedic, SWAT paramedic, and paramedic instructor. He's been through quite a bit. He's a mental health advocate as well as a cancer survivor.
And business owner. I mean, there's just a long list.
Man, yeah, you're all over the place.
And a professor now.
I'm a professor now.
Oh,
yes.
man.
So thanks for being on the show, first and foremost.
I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all having me here.
And we love our stories of our first responders. And it seems to me that you've dabbled in quite a bit of, military, police, and firefighting. So before we get started into your instructing career and what you're doing today, let's rewind it back and talk about how this journey started for you. Why did you join the military, and what did you do?
Oh, absolutely. So let's see, starts way back when, because I've been doing this for a while. I came from a broken home, divorced parents, and my sister and I lived on our own for a while. I got in some trouble. When I got out of trouble, I ended up finding myself homeless from the time I was 17 till I was 20.
Okay.
During that time, I was trying to work full time to put myself through college, get some kind of education. I knew I needed to further, my education, do something with my life.
Sure.
Ended up when I was 17 also dropping out of high school and getting my GED. So ended up dropping out of high school, find myself in my car. I'm working construction. I'm delivering pizza at night, trying to go put myself through college, and just was not able to do it. So after doing this for a few years, I was looking at my options, and the military was a great option.
Yeah.
So no joke, at lunch one day from my construction job, I got in my car and I drove to a recruiter's station that I saw on the way to work that morning, and the Army was the first one.
Yeah.
So I pulled in, there's the Army, I walked in the door and I joined. I literally shipped out for boot camp a week and a half later, 10 days
no
later.
kidding.
I just said, I want to join, I got to go do something.
Yeah.
So 10 days later I went.
And he's like, boy, do I have something great for you to do.
Man, I had the best job in the world. We have this job. It's an 11 Bravo. You're going to learn so much about camping and exercise. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
see the world. They
see
say.
the world. Sounds great. I saw South Carolina, Georgia, and pretty much Tennessee and Kentucky.
And what year is this? when you're
this was in 1989.
1989.
1989. So I joined the military, went through all my training. I actually joined the reserves first. Mm-hmm. So I joined the reserves, and after about 6 months of my training, I go back home and to the same old. I did not like it. I was like, I should have just joined active. So I went to my commander and I'm like, hey, I really love the military. I want to go ahead and go active. So just letting y'all know. He's like, yeah, that's not how this works. He's like, we have a budget and you just ate up a bunch of it for the training. You have to do 6 months.
Okay.
So I was back there, stayed in reserves for about 6 months, and my first drill, when I hit that 6 months, I went to him and said, okay, 6 months is up. I want to go active. So they ended up sending me to Fort Campbell,
Nice.
101st, and I went active. So I did 4 years after that. So a total of about 5 years. I got out in end of 93. So
Okay.
beginning 89 to end of 93.
Okay.
Any crossover with Desert Storm?
So I got in there and my unit was already deployed. Mm-hmm. So I was at the tail end of that. I was getting ready to be deployed, and everything just ended.
Yeah,
So,
kind of fizzled out.
Yeah, it fizzled out. So I didn't have to go over the Desert Storm. So
Okay.
my military career was fairly uneventful for the most part.
Uneventful, maybe, but also I think it's a really interesting note that it kind of pulled you out of that poverty that you were living in too.
100%. the one thing I did not understand about that poverty I was living in and the way I was living is I was very immature. I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was essentially a kid that was trying to become an adult and did not have that path. That military absolutely gave me a path.
Yeah.
Everywhere from financial responsibility with a good paycheck and how to handle it to when I went in, I had long hair and I was just, didn't care about anything. And, I came out a man. So, yeah, it absolutely made me grow up, which was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. So, yeah, loved it. Then when I got out, I grew up in Texas. I grew up, around Dallas, and I wanted something a little different. No joke. I looked at a map and I went, you know what? I've never been to Chicago before. I loaded my car and I went to Chicago.
Of all places.
What drove you to that decision?
I really don't know.
Chicago.
I just drove up to Chicago and I was like, we're going to see what we can do here.
Okay.
So I go to Chicago and rented one of these hotels that you can rent by the week. And I rented it for a few weeks. Looking in the paper, I found a lady that her son had gone off to college, so I rented a room from her. And I got a job with a construction company, making pretty good money, and just was kind of trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
One day after work, now this is Chicago, it's cold, it's windy, was not really happy being up there, kind of missed all my friends and everybody here, but I was like, we're going to make this work. One day after work, I decided to go grab a beer. So I go in this bar, and it is an old police precinct. So I walk in this bar, and it was funny because it was an old police precinct, but it was taken over by a bunch of firefighters. They made it their bar, and there were no cops in there. I didn't know this at the time, but I'm sitting at the bar having a drink, got talking to a guy next to me. He had a friend with him, and we just started talking. They became two close friends of mine. They ended up being, they were Chicago firefighters.
Okay.
I wasn't one of these kids that grew up wanting to be a firefighter. I wasn't sure what I wanted to be. But after I met them and got to be friends with them, we started hanging out, and they became two of my buddies that we would go drinking together. They played volleyball. I was big into volleyball, so we go and play volleyball tournaments together and stuff. And after hearing all their stories and all the cool things they've done, I'm like, that's what I want to do. So that's when I decided I wanted to be a firefighter.
Okay.
And as most firefighters will know, the best way to be a firefighter is become a medic first, because that's your best path. So they told me, hey, if you want to apply, you should, go to EMS school, become an EMT, and then a paramedic. So I went to my EMT school, and while I was there, I applied for the fire department a couple times, and unfortunately, I didn't have a father and a grandfather's grandfather that was a firefighter in Chicago, so my chances were very slim.
Sure.
And now it's wintertime, and I'm like, why am I here? It was horrible up there in the winter. It was cold. So I decided to come back to Texas. Came back to Texas and ended up getting hired at a Paris Fire Department. So Paris, Texas. I got hired at my first fire department. I started applying. I was going to apply for a bunch of different jobs. That was the first one I applied for. They had an opening, and I went through the process. They hired 3 of us. They took 300 applicants, and 3 of us got hired. They offered jobs to. So I was like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. They hired me on a Thursday, and they sent me to Fire Academy on Monday.
No kidding.
Yes,
Yeah.
they need it's
Quick.
It was like when I joined the military.
Yeah.
It was like, here's your job. You
Start.
start in 2 days. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Exciting stuff, though.
It was exciting. Yeah, I was very excited. I was like, okay, I have a path now. I have an idea. I mean, a few years ago, I'm a high school dropout with living in my car with no path whatsoever. Now, I have a career job as a firefighter. Granted, then I was making $19,500 a year, and I was like, this is the best job ever.
Yeah.
I'm making $19,000 a year, and I only have to work 1 out of every 3 days.
Fantastic.
I'm going to work here forever. This is great, right? So I go through my fire academy, and then I get on shift. My first shift was Christmas Day. So I get out of the academy, and, of course, all the old-timers, take their vacation. They're like, hey, here's a new guy coming. I'm taking vacation day, so I had to work it.
Okay.
So I work vacation day. Christmas Day. So Christmas Day comes, my first shift, first fully involved structure fire. Okay.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. No shit,
Day
exactly.
one.
Day one.
Okay,
And
welcome.
I'm like, okay, this is what I've been training for. Now, granted, I just came out of the fire academy where they teach you. You show up and you have an engine, then another engine comes, maybe a ladder truck, the ambulance. You'll have 15, 20 guys there to help put out this fire. Paris Fire Department didn't get that memo because I was on an engine with a driver and myself. We show up to the call. The other engines come from the other side of town. We get out. I stretch the hose, and I'm like, "What do you need me to do?" He goes, "Get in there and put out the fire." I'm like, "It's just me and you."
Yeah.
He's like, "This is what you signed up for." Now, grant this is in '94.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, a little different.
So in the house I go, terrified.
Damn.
Terrified. There's smoke. It's hot. I can't see anything. It's crackling. I'm like, this is not like the hay bales we've been setting on fire in the
Yeah.
cabin. This is a little different. This is real. But, then the other engines start coming, and I was hooked.
That's awesome.
That was it.
Day one. Huh?
Day one, yeah.
And on Christmas Day.
And on Christmas Day, yeah.
Welcome to the club, right? Speaking of club, now, did you see a lot of similarities to military service, that brotherhood, the sisterhood, to like what that brotherhood looked like at the department as well?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The rank structure, how your just the discipline of things, checking off the equipment, how detailed we are with making sure our equipment's maintenance and taken care of. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities with it, and it's kind of funny because police and fire, that's why they draw a lot of veterans, ex-military. Matter of fact, my first job, there were 56 firefighters that worked for the city at that point, and I want to say at one point there were 35 of us that were ex-military.
Oh yeah, that
So
makes
it was,
sense.
Yeah, it was almost all ex-military. My whole crew was ex-military. So yeah, it's nice because then you got stories and you talk and
you share a little bit more.
Yeah,
too.
and you build that brotherhood too because you're not going into combat together, but you're fighting a fire together. So you still have to watch out for each other's back. Your lives are still in the other person's hands. I mean, there's been many times we've had, a collapse or something where you've had to help drag somebody out or get them out. I had a roof collapse on me one time, and two of the guys that were coming out of the fire, pulled the boards off me and dragged me out from under the roof. So I mean, there's a lot of similarities. You're still going to combat with these guys, and you become very, very close. Yeah. Our wives became close. Our kids became close. Grew up together. So yeah, it's a really tight knit group. It's a lot of fun.
So that was your first fire department.
It was my first fire department and my first fire. Yeah. So yeah, it's and it didn't get any slower from there.
Okay.
Paris is a very busy fire department.
How big of a city is it?
Oh, it's only about 30,000 people, and it's been like that for 200 years, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a busy city. There's a lot of fires.
Interesting. So at this point, are you just an EMT or are you a paramedic?
So at this point, I'm what they call an intermediate. I was still in school trying to get my paramedic, so I was still in school doing it. Paris Fire Department only required you to be an EMT basic.
Okay.
But I was wanting to get my paramedic so I could go on and do more.
Sure, yeah.
My goal was not to stay in Paris, even though I ended up being there 11 years.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of things. There was you go to a bigger city and they'll have like a hazmat team, and you have to apply to get on the hazmat team. It's usually seniority.
Okay.
Rescue teams, things like that. You have a small department like that. I was on the dive team. I was on the ropes team. I was on every team they had you could join because they needed people to do it.
Okay.
So I actually, one of the things I did was I was a rescue diver for the fire department, and then got on the DPS rescue diver list, and I was a rescue diver for 21 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
And just because they needed somebody.
Do you think it helps to start with a smaller department and then work your way up? So, I mean, obviously it's the same qualifications, right? So you get sent to these schools where you go to let's say Chicago, for instance, and there is a list on there that's probably substantially longer. So do you think like maybe, getting all of your qualifications at a small department and then moving on to a bigger one is the way to go? Or
I personally do, yeah. And the reason being is you do have all those little specialties that you can, partake in, put your finger in and see if that's what you like. And then if you decide to go to a bigger department, which is what I did, you have a good idea of what everything else entails, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do then and what path you want to go down, whether it's swiftwater rescue or dive team or high angle rescue or stuff like that. You can kind of pick what you wanted to do, and that's kind of what I did when I left Paris 11 years later, went to McKinney, and then I kind of found my niche, what I wanted to do there.
Yeah.
So
So tell us a little bit about the rest of your time in Paris. So, I mean, 11 years at a small department like that, multiple qualifications. I'm sure you've seen some very interesting stuff
I have seen
with your neighbors too, right?
Yes, I've seen some very interesting calls. My second shift, okay, was my second fire, and
Are you serious?
yeah, I am.
Which is, I mean, not very probable at this point. Like,
Yeah, 2 for 2, huh?
2 for 2.
Usually, yeah, it's a little more than the average, but you know, we were averaging 1 to 2 a month. So I mean, it just happened these were 2 shifts back to back. I ended up. That was also my first fire fatality. You know, so we get there and we. It was an elderly lady, and her grandson was taking care of her and was just tired of taking care of her. So she went to bed, and he went out clubbing, and before he left, he lit the house on fire. And
Wow.
because he didn't want to take care of her anymore. So we get there, and we knew there was probably somebody in there. We couldn't find her. So as we're doing overhaul, we found her body. And being the rookie, the tradition is, and now this is now about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we find our tradition there was the rookie now has to put her in the body bag.
Sure.
So they're like, hey, rookie, go get the bag. Come on over here.
Day
So my
2.
job was to put her in the bag. And now I'm starting to think, what did I get into? Right?
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they take you to breakfast after that. Yeah, it was really strange.
Well, how was that experience for you? I mean, this is day 2 at the department. You're not really used to this kind of stuff.
I'm not used to it, but I'll be honest, it didn't really bother me that much.
Okay.
I worked with most of them were a bunch of old farm boys, you know, and it was just very matter of fact,
Yeah.
and
This is how it is.
this is how it is, yeah. And it's really weird looking back because if I were to say something like this bothers me, I would have been blacklisted.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. You know,
Yeah.
you can't handle this
Especially
job.
back then.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely, 100%.
it was like rub dirt on it,
Oh,
move
yeah.
on.
Oh, for sure. I had a call, and one that, you know, still to this day, I, you know, see in my head. It's probably my 4th or 5th year there. I was officer on a rescue truck. We had a county-wide rescue truck. So Paris is like the center of the county, and then they have a rescue truck that takes care of all the little volunteer areas. And the volunteers will now come help you with calls.
Okay.
So usually very busy on Friday, Saturday nights because you're taking care of the whole county. So I was officer on the truck, on the rescue truck. We get a call of a car that had hit a tree out in the county. So we get there, and it's this 18-year-old girl who was driving. She had been drinking at a party, hit a tree, and it had pushed the dash down on her leg so she couldn't get out. She's drunk. She's in pain, you know, trying to get out. We show up, and we're having to wait for volunteers to come. So the way volunteers work, I don't know if you know this, they get the call wherever they're at. They have to go to the station, get the apparatus, check it off, wait for anybody else to come, and then go out to the call. So we're usually there way before them.
Sure.
So we're there. There's 3 of us on the truck. So we're there trying to pop the door. We see that we have to roll the dash, which is push the dash off her to get her out. Well, a lot of times when there's car wrecks, we'll get calls of smoke showing. Well, it's usually just the airbags deployed.
Yeah.
This one, when we got there, it was actually smoke showing. We're on a rescue truck that does not have water. We only had a fire extinguisher. So we were trying to get the hood with a crowbar popped up to put the fire extinguisher on her and put it out. As we're doing this, the fire's growing. We could not get this dash off of her for anything. And we're trying, and we're hurrying. We're waiting for a volunteer truck to show up with water. While we're doing this, the fire's getting bigger and bigger, and you're sitting here face to face with someone promising, I'm doing everything I can, I'm going to get you out, everything's going to be okay. And it got to the point where I had to make the judgment call that we had to just back out of there. We couldn't stay in there anymore to get her out.
And this is because like car fires get to like 4,000.
Oh, yeah. So we had to sit there and watch her burn to death. So we just had to back off, and she was, you know, I'm sitting here closer than you and I are right now, promising her we're going to do everything we can, and then we have to just get out of the way and, you know.
And how long did it take for volunteers to get in?
Probably about another, it seems like 2 hours, but honestly, probably about another 4 or 5 minutes. But it's too late at that point.
Yeah.
So
barely too late,
So
yeah.
right. So at that time, you kind of, you know, it bothers you. You go back, you talk about it, and you just kind of, it's done. The way we do things is you go back to the station, tell a couple jokes maybe about it. You just talk about it, whatever you've got to do, and then that's it. It's done. Don't bring it up again. Okay, and that's the way we handled it. You don't bring it up again, done.
Yeah.
Okay, so, or that's how it was back then. So move on, and just kind of builds up, but you still think about it. You know, you might not talk about it, but I promise you, something like that you're going to think about.
Absolutely.
You know, and then there's just all these calls year after year after year go on. In Paris, there was plenty of them. I mean, another call we had that really got to me was we had a 6 o'clock in the morning, right before shift change, we get a call of a structure fire. So we're pulling out station. You can see the sky's glowing, so we know it's close. I was at a substation on one side of town, so the engine's probably going to take 3 or 4 minutes from the other side of town to get there. So we get there first. Sure enough, there's 2 guys, and I'll never forget, they're in camo, and they're pointing at the house yelling. And I thought they were yelling fire, and it's right there. And I mean, you could see, and all I could think is, of course, that's where the fire is. I can see. I mean, I can see this thing from the other side of town, right? But when we got off, they're screaming, "There's somebody in there! There's somebody in there!" So there were 3 of us on the engine. The engineer puts in pump gear. We stretched the line, and they told us they were in this room over here. So go to the room. We heard somebody scream for help. So my partner gets halfway in the window and starts searching. I'm holding his ankles while he's searching. Couldn't find him. Pulled him out. We went in the house. Had to go in the front door, through the living room, into the kitchen, down this long hall. It's all got smoke all the way to the ground, so you're kind of just going by feel, crawling by feel to get there. Yeah. Find the room, the door's closed. I laid on my back. We kicked the door open. We went in, and I went to the right, and he went to the left, and then I can hear him yell, "I've got him, I've got him." So I turned around, went back, helped him. We picked the guy up, and out the door we go. I can remember as we were coming out the front door, I had his legs, and my partner had his under his shoulders, and I can remember looking at his thighs, and I can see him split open to where I can see the bones in his thighs, and the guy wasn't breathing anymore. So we laid him in the front yard. We did a surgical airway on him, started CPR, and got him back. So they bring him to the burn unit. He was burned pretty bad. So he goes to his burn unit, and that's what every firefighter wants to do, is pull somebody out of a house fire and save them, right? That's like the ultimate. So we're on top of the world. We just saved somebody. We did something that every firefighter wants to do. Paris Fire Department, I want to say 1868 is when it was formed, give or take a few years, but right around there. And that was the first legit official save out of a structure fire there. Wow. So we're like on top of the world.
Yeah.
Okay. We get presented with appreciation certificates from the city and the mayor and all this stuff. And then we decide, hey, we're going to go see this guy. He's in Parkland Hospital in Dallas. We're going to go see this guy. He's in the burn unit, and we're going to bring a hat and a T-shirt, and hey, look at us. We're the heroes that saved your life, right? So we get there, and we're all happy talking about the whole way there, and we get to the hospital, and when we get there to see him, he was getting debris. So we had to wait for him to come back. So he comes back, and he can barely talk, and he wants to know who the hell we are. We're like, oh, we're the guys that pulled you out of the fire, saved your life, and blah, blah. And his response to us is, fuck you. Look what you did to me. Now I've got to live like this. I hope you're happy.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was like, wow.
Takes the wind out of the sails, huh?
Yeah, and we're just like, what do you say? What do you say to the guy? All I can say is, I'm sorry. It's literally all I could say. Mm-hmm. So we left him a hat, and we said, hey, brought you a hat and a shirt, and we left. Okay. Parkland to Paris, about 2.5 hour drive. And the 3 of us did not speak a word to each other the whole way home because we were all just devastated. We got a heroism award from the International Association of Firefighters in Washington, which is huge. They came down and presented it to us, and it's like, that's huge. That's like, that's like the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
It's equivalent to that. So we get this award, and we're all just like, okay, thanks, Couple years, so a year goes by, and the guy comes up to the station. He's still alive. He's burned really bad, can't hardly grow any hair. He's missing a couple fingers, a leg's amputated, but he comes to the station, and he's like, thank you. I'm sorry about what I said. He's wearing the hat we got. I'm sorry about what I said. You gave me a second chance at life, all this other stuff. And so now we're back on, this is great.
Yeah.
Talking to the other guys, none of us ever hung our awards up or anything. They all just went in a drawer somewhere. We're like ashamed of it almost. Yeah. 2 years after that, we ran a call. he committed suicide. He shot himself because he left a note saying he couldn't live like this anymore. And it's just like this roller
So
coaster.
it just kept you
crazy.
in. Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand like what first responders, some of that stuff that we actually do go through.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy.
I mean, that's ups and downs over the course of 4 years? 5 years?
At this point about 5,
Yeah.
about 5 to 6 at the most, yeah.
That's a long duration to have,
Oh yeah, and then
one call following you.
oh yeah,
for 5
exactly. And
years,
then you've got all these other little calls in between with kids and just all kinds of other things.
And as you're going through this, I'm sure it's not all just linear as well. I mean, you're going through this for 5 years. This person says this one comment, and it makes you think about all the other people.
Oh, 100%.
And then all the other experiences come in, the other faces, the 18-year-old girl, and all this stuff. Like, so you start to question, did I make the right call?
Oh, absolutely. Several times I've questioned did I make the right call. And the funny thing is, it's like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this job. And then it's like, it's a good job. It's for a good cause. And you don't understand how it's changing your thinking and what it's doing to you.
Yeah.
How you process thoughts, how you deal with other people, how you handle things like that. I ended up going through a marriage during that time because I just became angry. Became very angry at everything because everything's bad.
Yeah.
It's not like things are good and I need to see the bad. It's like everything's bad and hopefully some things will be good. I was in a I ended up having so we had a 18-month-old and I was in a structure fire and there was what they call flashover. It's where everything in the house ignites at once.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like 98% of firefighters do not come out of that.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting out of it, but I got third-degree burns on my back and on me. And I thought that was the end of it. Right then I thought, okay, this is a good time to just say enough's enough and walk away.
And how long in is this?
This is now 10 years in.
10 years.
Okay. I started really questioning the job and do I want to do this? Maybe this, is more than I want. I was really questioning, could I even ever go in a fire again after that? Because it was a very close call.
Sure.
And then I started thinking, I'm not sure, but maybe another department would be a better. It's kind of like running from this one. I'm going to go somewhere else because I'll go to a slower department or a bigger city that can spread the calls amongst the
Has
people,
resources.
Has
Yeah.
resources. So I ended up going to another department, McKinney, thinking that it was going to be a little different. It was just a different kind of call now.
Okay.
So that's about the time I went through the divorce. I went to McKinney and I got put on a truck company. I'd finished my paramedic school by now, so I was been a paramedic for a little while now also. They focus more on, because Paris was fire that just required you to be an EMT in case you got help on the ambulance. McKinney runs their own ambulance, so now you have to be a paramedic. So the call shifted from mostly fire to mostly medic stuff.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'm running a lot of medical calls along with that. So running these medical calls, just the kinds of calls that I was running here were a lot different. There it was back roads, country roads, drivers hitting trees and going off the ditch and stuff like that. Here it's highway accidents and more mass casualty kind of things, and it just compounds even more. About 2 years into working for McKinney, I was starting to have a lot of issues with dealing with things. I was very angry. I didn't understand why the divorce happened. I would find myself, I was drinking a lot.
Sure.
When I was not at that fire department, I wanted nothing to do with the fire service. I did not wear clothes that said I was a firefighter. I don't have stickers on my truck. Nothing. It just, I did not want to associate with it. So we ran a call one time. So we run a call. It's one of these middle of the night kind of calls of a possible CPR for an infant.
Okay.
So we're like, okay. So I was on the engine that day. So I was working overtime. I'm on the engine. My captain was also working overtime. He was on my shift. We were both working overtime. I was tailboarding the engine. We had the driver, the captain, and I on the engine. Then we had 2 medics that were probably 5 or less years in service on the ambulance. We get to the call. Obviously, the ambulance gets there quicker than the engine. As we're pulling up, I see one of the medics carrying this 3-month-old out of the house doing CPR. Okay? Come to find out what happened, Mom's on the front porch smoking a cigarette. Come to find out what happened was baby was sleeping in bed with Mom. Baby started crying. Mom couldn't get it stopped. Mom picks baby up and throws it against the wall. So we have to work this kid. Yeah, exactly. And so we have to work this kid.
And you got to take that emotion
out
of it completely. And just, I mean, it's just purely situational at this point. I'm sure there's moments that are infuriating to you where you want to respond.
Yep. You have to know that if you respond, 2 things are going to happen. 1, you're interfering with whatever case that could be.
Yeah.
And 2, you're taking care away from what you're supposed to be doing.
Also accurate. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And when I was in McKinney, I did a few things. I went not only now was I a paramedic, but I went to critical care school because I wanted to be the best paramedic. I also went to advanced practice school for a community health program thing. But I went to as much school and took as much training because I wanted to be that patient's best chance.
Sure.
I wanted to be the highest trained paramedic in the city and get the best chance.
Sounds like you should have gone medic. 68 whiskey in the Army.
I should have gone 68 whiskey. Yes, I should have. If I would have known then,
hindsight's 2020. I mean, it definitely amplified your ability to get to the position where you're at. I mean, you were living in a car, but continuing that education
was huge.
Yeah.
But that call changed so much for me because the 2 medics, it was me and the 2 medics in the back, and they were just distraught for good reasons. And I kept a calm head, and I was directing the call the best I could. Captain drove us there. We get to the hospital, take the kid in. They worked him for a minute, and they called, pronounced him. Sure. So they're all in there talking about it and upset and stuff. I go out to the ambulance. I'm cleaning the ambulance up, getting it back in service. Captain comes out to me and is like, "You all right?" He's like, "Are you sure?" He goes, "We're all in here. Why don't you just come on in and we'll talk about. We'll get the medic back in a minute." I'm like, "No, if we have another call, we need to get this thing in service."
Yeah.
We had a chaplain, department chaplain at that time, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna have him come up next shift when we get off in the morning because it was when we got off in the morning, then the other guys were starting." He goes, "When we get off in the morning, we're gonna have the chaplain come up. Let's all sit around and talk. Why don't you hang over for a little bit and we'll talk?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." He's like, "Well, it'd help and, a little debrief." I said, "No, I'm fine." And he's like, "Whatever." So come to find out that I wasn't fine. I was the one that wasn't fine. I was at the point where I had no emotions anymore. I was checked out. Nothing bothered me.
Yeah.
And that is not a good place to be. A 3-month-old being, killed that way should bother anybody.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just a call.
Yeah.
And it took my captain and the other 2 guys on that call to get me to see and seek counseling. So I reached out to EAP, and they set me up with a counselor.
What's EAP?
It's essentially it's an emergency assistance program, I think is what it stands for. But it's essentially your work and stuff. We'll pay for a counselor for 10 visits or whatever it is, and get you some assistance.
Yeah.
So I reached out to the EAP, and they hooked me up with a counselor. I go see this counselor. First time I see him, explain why I'm here, and we talk for a little bit. Second visit, he's kind of like, okay, now he's wanting to talk about my dreams and my nightmares and all this stuff that I'm like, I wasn't comfortable talking about. And after the 3rd time I see this guy, he literally looks at me and says, "I think your problems are way more than I'm capable of handling." And that's when I went, what the hell do I do?
Oh, man, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, what do I do? He was a specialist in trauma therapy. But I found out there's a big difference over the time. It's one thing dealing with a trauma that happens and helping somebody unpack a trauma. It's totally different at this point. I'm 15 years into a career, maybe 12 years, unpacking 12 years of trauma.
And very specialized trauma as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, there's a difference.
Right. So I kind of just gave up on counseling. And
But back to drinking?
just kept drinking. Yep, just kept drinking. And I ended up going back to a counselor about a year later, found another one, same kind of situation, but I thought I'd see it through, maybe because I was struggling with a lot of stuff, drinking especially. Right away, that counselor put me on medication. So I was medicated
Okay.
to where it was hard to function at my job. Thought I was going to lose my job because of my performance or anything. So I just decided to cold turkey stop taking medication. Also, not the smartest idea. I knew this being a medic, but I was like, I'll just deal with it. And I
Power
dealt with
through.
it.
But this is exactly the problem
This is exactly
with
the
the
problem.
system.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's like, here's some medication. I was diagnosed with PTSD, severe depression disorder, and severe anxiety disorder. And I'm like, I've never had anxiety in my life, and they're giving me medication for all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm supposed to function and work doing this, drive an ambulance and take care of patients.
Yeah.
So it was not good. Almost ended my career. Finally, I just said, I'm done. I stopped taking it, and the drinking helped a lot after that. So, I was remarried at this point. That lasted for a little while, so it was still, we still had a marriage. It was rough. It was rocky. I thought it was all her always, and then you start looking back at, I was probably not the easiest person to get along or deal with.
Sure.
So as I'm going through all this, I'm just trying to deal with life. Then fast forward to 2017, we ended up separating or going through a divorce, and a month later I get diagnosed with cancer from the job, 100% related to the job. I was not happy, obviously.
can
It put me in a
imagine.
very bad headspace, and things spiraled really bad out of control.
What type of cancer were you diagnosed with?
So it was prostate cancer.
Okay.
Strangely enough,
Which is usually
it's really weird because I was taking care of patients and stuff, and I'm like, okay, prostate cancer, 10 to 12 years, 15 years before it kills you. So I'm talking to my doctor, and she's like, first year, yours a little more advanced. She said, second, she goes, yeah, that's if you're like 7 or 8 years old. You're 47 at this time. I'm 47. She's like, no, you got like 3, maybe 4 years.
Oh,
And
man.
I'm like, oh no, I had a young kid at the time. I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen? And I'm single by myself now, just devastated. And I'm like, 3 to 4 years. I thought I had time to live, right? So was dealing with that. Didn't want to tell the people at work because I had to still pay my bills. I couldn't afford disability, to be on disability, 60% of my pay. So I still worked. I still had my kids to take care of. I still had to, live a life and responsibilities. So I told my immediate supervisor and I told the chief of the department, and that's it. And I said, if anything else happens to me, if I'm not here today, this is why. Okay, but I'm going to be here as long as I can do my job. And I would literally go to my shift, work my shift, get off shift, go get treatment, and then lay around for 2 days, and then go back to shift. And I did that, and I missed 1 day of work because they switched up my medication. I slept through my shift. But my immediate supervisor knew, so he actually took the fire truck and comes over to my house in this huge ladder truck, 2 districts over, knocks on the door. You okay? I'm like, oh, what? He's like, okay, good. You're alive. Okay, don't worry about it. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty good
team.
Yeah. So supervisor comes over, and they make sure I was all right, and I was good. So I get through the cancer treatments. Everything goes into remission. Things are going pretty good. And I just decided that
So it goes into remission.
yeah,
Which is surprising.
Which was very surprising. Yeah, everybody thinks lung cancer is what firefighters get. It's either prostate, colon, something like that, because of our bunker pants is usually what we get.
Really?
Yeah. So the good thing is
It's because of your what?
bunker pants, the pants you wear,
Like
Yeah.
the turnouts?
our turnouts. Yeah. So a lot of the carcinogens, that's one of the things we always leave on. We'll take our jackets off, we'll take our air packs off, even when we're not breathing the smoke and stuff. All the carcinogens that are soaked into our pants, we're now wearing them. And your groin is some of the thinnest skin in your body, so it just soaks up into your groin, and
No
you get
kidding.
that's where the cancers usually start.
Is
Yeah.
there a solution to that?
There's Yeah, there's some. Swap out your bunker gear a lot. Don't wear the same ones over and over. If you go to a fire, wash them. Take them off, wash them, put some other ones on.
Yeah.
Just try not to wear them as much. We would wear them on EMS calls. We would wear them going to a grocery store. We would wear them all the time.
Yeah.
So
You're just basking in it.
You're basking in it all the time. And when you sweat, what happens? Your pores open up, and all that carcinogen just flows right in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pants.
The pants. Yeah.
Wow.
The pants. So, but after that, with that, I ran a bad call, and I decided that, you know what? This may not be the career I want to follow anymore. I've done 25 years at this point, and I wanted to transition to something else in life. I ended up meeting someone. I had gone through a divorce in that time too, right before the cancer. So I was single for a few years, and I ended up meeting someone, and we started dating. We ended up having a kid, going on 56, and I've got a 3-year-old.
Good for you.
No, she's awesome. She is actually awesome. I appreciate her at this age more than I would, if I was a lot younger.
Homeless.
Definitely.
More than what now.
Definitely more than what I was homeless. There's not a lot of places for her to sleep. It was a
I got
it was a
passport,
Camaro.
right,
It was really
right.
hard to sleep in a
Yeah, there you
Camaro.
In the Camaro.
But yeah, so I decided I wanted to go off and do other things. I started this community health program. We're the first fire department in the country to go see patients actively. I started working with the IFF, our big association, and I would travel and speak on community health with the IFF. Pushed that really hard, got that going, and ended up there was no software to report on the IFF with, or report on the community health with. So I worked with the IFF on trying to get the software out there. I ended up finding a software company. We became partners. I'm part owner of the software company now.
Wow.
My fiance and I have been together 5 years at this point now, and we've got a 3-year-old together. So I decided, you know what? I ended up with a service dog from the PTSD. I have a full-time service dog. I ended up with cancer. I've had numerous close calls with broken bones and being burned and stuff. I'm like, you know what? I've got a 3-year-old, and I would like to have a nice, long life.
Yeah.
So I need to do something a little different. I gave 25 years to the fire service. On my 25th anniversary, I turned in a 6-month resignation. So I did 25 and a half years, and I walked away. I miss the camaraderie. I miss,
Sure.
I'm an adrenaline junkie. I miss, the guys and stuff and the fires. But it's such a small part of everything that I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I have enough memories, good and bad, for the rest of my life. I finished with being a high school dropout. I went back to college and ended up getting a 4-year degree.
Oh,
That's how I
nice.
became the professor. They don't just let high school dropouts do that.
Yeah.
So, but I still wanted to be kind of part of it. So what I did is reached out to the Collin College. It's a big community college here. It's huge. And they have a very well-respected paramedic program teaching paramedics. So as fate would have it, they were needing a professor to teach paramedic school. They only have 2 of them.
Okay.
And they were down 1, needing another one. So I applied and got the job. So I started teaching paramedic school. So now I'm a paramedic professor, and I get to train the next generation, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I get to train the next generation and use all my experiences on, what to do. I also, because of my years as a tactical SWAT medic and as a critical care medic, I also work. There's another campus where we have a fire academy and a police academy. And strangely enough, I don't even work on a fire academy ever. I've never taught over there, but I teach on the police side. I teach tactical medic stuff and
Okay.
to either law enforcement or other fire departments that are sending tactical medics through. And I also teach tactics because of my background, what they call an alert level 1 instructor, so I get to teach tactics as well. So I get to teach room entries and clearings and stuff like that.
Nice.
And it's a lot of fun. So I get to
Keeps you
do all
involved
that.
still.
Keeps me
Yeah.
involved still, yeah. And it's great. My fiance's wasn't thrilled about it when she did it, but I support her because I love her. She's in police academy currently as we talk. She's a veteran, and this is what she's wanted to do. I was not.
That's awesome.
I was not thrilled because I was hoping that retirement would be I get to come home every night, and my wife's there, and weekends and holidays, and I was done with first responder life. But this is something that's really important to her. She wanted to do so.
And how'd you guys meet?
It's funny story, on the job. So she was a dispatcher with the city, and it was 2 shifts before my retirement, and she just started as a dispatcher, and they had to ride out with police and fire to kind of see what they do and stuff like that. So she ended up having to ride out on my vehicle, and I was on a squad, so I had a 3/4-ton truck with our medical gear and fire gear, so I responded to all the calls throughout the city.
Okay.
So I was busy. It was my partner and I. So she rode out with us, and at the end of the shift, she didn't say a whole lot, and she came back up the next shift and was like, hey, maybe we can go grab a cup of coffee or something. I was like,
She asked you out.
I don't date people that I work with.
Yeah.
She's like, you are retiring this shift.
It's your last shift.
Right. So I waited till I retired, and then about a week later, reached out to her, and we
Nice.
started going out. We've been together 5 years, and like I said, I have a 3-year-old.
Fantastic.
And she left dispatch to follow her dream of being a police officer, and good for her.
Yeah, that's
Support her.
amazing.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. So just to back it up just a little bit, you said you got over the PTS, and I know it's not as simple. It's not as simple as that, right?
It's definitely not.
So I wanted to talk about kind of your methodology, if you will, on what helped you kind of get through a lot of that anger that you were facing. I mean, there's only so much you could do with drugs and alcohol.
There is, and when I got to drinking like a fifth of Jack a day, I decided that was probably enough I needed to do with alcohol. Getting over it, I'm not. I still have my nightmares. I still see things that bother me and remind me of things. I was driving down the road not too long ago and saw this white van on fire, and it reminded me of a call I went on, and it just was a bad day after that. Yeah. So not over it, manage it. I definitely just manage it.
And that's kind of how you got linked up with the facility?
So the way I got, this is how I got linked up with, it was 22 killed then. It wasn't even one tribe. They only saw veterans then. I was very lucky that I was a veteran and a first responder. I had a call of a 12-year-old on a bike, make it short, 12-year-old on a bike, got hit. It was my call. I took care of the kid. He ended up dying. And I kind of just gave up. I was like, I went through a divorce. I'm dealing with cancer. I'm tired of running these calls. I had a big house. I was coming home alone every day, this empty house, and I just got tired of dealing with things. This call was on a Saturday. I got off Sunday morning, came home, started drinking to deal with stuff, depressed, just was through. Drank all night, and then the next morning, my best friend came over, and by the grace of God, he shows up at the door and was talking to me and stuff, and helped me find a place. And I called them, and they're like, "Come in right now, and we'll talk to you." So I picked the phone, came in, talked to him.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is our first time in the facility, doing a few podcasts this week, and just curious to what your experience was with them, how they helped you.
So first,
and if you think it's a good program.
I think it's an incredible program. Yeah, I think it's an incredible program. And the way they helped me was, one of the first things they did was they had one of their counselors talk to me. And I know it's kind of cliche, but they essentially talked me off the bridge. And I was done.
Yeah.
I was literally, if my friend wouldn't come over Monday, I was just, in my mind, I was going to take my life. I was through. I did not want to deal with it anymore. And they kind of talked me off the bridge, so to speak. And it helps knowing that I'm not the only one going through this, and give you some tools to work with. And they literally sat here and talked to me for like 3 hours that day. And it was awesome. When I left, I was like, okay, there's hope. There's a chance to do something. They give you ideas and tools and explain that this is normal, the way you're feeling stuff. And then they also hooked me up with a good counselor who was not someone who deals with a one-time trauma, but understands. Matter of fact, he's ex-military, understands military and first responders and stuff. So they were able to put me in contact with someone who understood the kind of trauma and the PTSD that I was going through, and was able to talk to me about it, and actually even compare it with some of his own stories, and
where you
could
help me
relate
work,
to it.
yeah, where I can relate to stuff. So it was awesome knowing that I'm sitting there talking to an ex-military veteran who is also going through this
Yeah.
and understands, other than someone who went to school for 10 years and has no clue what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Are you familiar with an organization called Friends of Firefighters?
No.
That's an organization we'll have to link you up with too. But they provide, and obviously you're doing your great work here, and they're incorporating the first responder mentality. But these guys have operated for decades on counseling services specifically catered towards firefighters.
That would be awesome.
And we work with them. They're one of our partners. So I would definitely love to get you hooked up to them. You got the veteran community piece really strong here, but I think having that firefighting community as well.
I think that would be awesome. It'd
Yeah.
be great, because right now I don't currently go to counseling, and it is, something that you just deal with forever. It's not something that goes away.
Yeah.
I thought retirement, it would just be done, it'd be over.
What I've found,
time.
and Christian can attest to this, like most of our guests could attest to this who've gone through. I mean, you're still in it in a way,
Yeah.
like you're still engaged in the community in a way. But just talking through it, like in this kind of setting with someone who understands over and over and over again
Yep.
until it holds no power over you
Right,
anymore.
right.
It starts to dull the emotional response that's relative to the stories.
Right. And I do pretty good with it. Most of it doesn't. There are days I wake up, I'm just depressed and just got to get through stuff.
Sure.
And then there's days when, like you say, I see the van on fire or something like that, or I see a house fire or something, and it reminds me of something. But it's not a daily thing. It used to be a daily, all-day thing.
So you're in the positive
So
direction.
I'm in the positive direction. I love it. Yeah, it's great. And it helps. I got, good support system. And, my fiance is really good about being there and stuff. So it helps a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to rewind it back because I had a specific question. You said your friend came over to the house on that weekend. Did you prompt him for help, or did he realize that there was something
He
wrong
realized
with you?
he's been my best friend
Okay.
now for almost 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
But he knows me pretty well, and he knew I was not in a good headspace, and
Yeah.
he could tell that I was very, very down. He also knows that I was dealing with a lot of PTSD and
Sure.
with the cancer and everything. So, he just kind of saw it, and
Good. It's good to have a friend like that in your corner,
it's unbelievable. Yeah,
especially
it's
when
great to
when they'll
have.
call you on it. Like, hey,
Great to have a friend like that, because I didn't talk about stuff with anybody. I pretty much isolated myself from everything. I didn't want nothing to do with anyone.
makes sense.
So I think it's an important and kind of a good kind of closeout for where we're at today, especially just talking about the tribe and the importance of community.
Oh, it's
Something that you've lived with your entire adult life at this
Yep.
point is, whether it's military service, police, firefighting, even the school setting, you have a certain set of individuals that are there to kind of bring you together.
Yep.
Do you think that engaging into a community like this is more therapy than going to a counseling session? Maybe.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. Every time I come up here, it's like an old family.
Yeah.
We all know each other. Hey, how's it going? These guys, and I didn't know them, any of them before this. I didn't serve with them. They weren't in my fire department, so I don't have that connection with them. But it's a different kind of connection. It's really neat, because if I don't check in or call every few months, they'll call, hey, you doing all right? Why don't you come up and say hi? How's it going? And they just check on you. And it's unbelievable to have that kind of support. When you feel like you're alone going through some of this stuff alone, then you have other people that have gone through the same similar stuff calling to check on you. That support group is just amazing. It is amazing. Yeah.
I think it's imperative, and there's a lot of people out there with no community. What if you had a piece of advice for someone searching for that? What would you say?
Searching for that kind of community.
Yeah. Since COVID, there's been a lot of people trapped in their house, kind of by themselves, isolated from their communities, working from home, doing the emails all day,
Yep.
drinking all night.
Get on the internet, find some charitable organizations to either work with, do something for others.
Yeah.
I find a lot. I try now to do stuff for others, and that is as much therapy as anything. And then also find like-minded people, like-minded groups, and just get together with them. Whether it's a poker night or something, just hang out with them.
Yeah.
And just go do stuff.
And anything really could be therapy as well.
Yeah.
That works for you, right? We talk about adventure therapies, exposure therapy, whatever it is. This is therapy for us. Like sitting down and chatting. We often talk about this. How many times do you really sit down and have a conversation for an hour with somebody?
Oh, almost never anymore
Rarely.
nowadays.
Yeah, we're always
Everything's
looking down.
texting
And living in our own worlds when we're so connected more than ever, but we're not really connected on a personal note anymore.
No, for sure. I belong to my fiance is a coordinator for Wounded Warrior Project. We get together with them a lot. We both work with or do stuff, volunteer and do stuff with another veterans organization. We mountain climb. We're
Nice.
big mountain climbers, so we like doing stuff like that. So anytime you can find a group of people that has, the same like-minded interests that you can get out and do stuff with, and then if they also have that same like-minded background, it's great. Just sit there and talk and share stories.
Absolutely.
So, I definitely want to close out with how are you feeling now? Do you feel like you're in the right direction?
Oh, I'm absolutely in the right direction. Yeah,
Good. 3-year-old
everything's going
baby,
good.
new
Got
wife
a
on the way as
3-year-old,
well.
New wife on the way. Yeah, career's going good, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Yeah, it's all going really well, actually.
That's fantastic. And recognizing that there's still more work to be done.
Yeah,
And hey, it's just the start. It's just the
It's
start.
the start of it. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for being on today and sharing your tale.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the
Dan.
interest.
Absolutely. You've led a very interesting life. I mean, especially from where you started from, like where we started the story, homeless, dealing with family issues, up to now, you've helped thousands of people throughout your career. You're continuing to help, you're continuing to give back as well. It's inspirational.
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that you pay everything forward.
Agreed. Well,
Beautiful.
thanks for your time, Dan.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
This has been the Medevac Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Keep an eye out next week. Every Thursday, a new episode drops. Interact with the content somehow if you would. Leave a review. Those help us a lot. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next time.